Yes, people. So if you watched last week's episode, I asked ChatGPT for 20 questions on mind, body, and soul, and it went down really well. I thought it was intellectually a very challenging pursuit, and I also found it very fulfilling to kind of perceive these questions through my own relative experience and try to articulate the answers in a way that would land with people, but also felt truthful to me. And it got some very good feedback, so I thought again today we'll do the same thing, because to be honest with you, I just enjoyed it. So let's go into the first question. So question number one is, how do you determine the thoughts worth focusing on versus those to let go of? I think the first point of determining what thoughts you should focus on and what to let go of is being aware of the thoughts. Like, if you don't have the awareness of what thoughts are even arising into your consciousness, then you're not going to have that ability to choose between what thoughts to pursue and what thoughts to let go. So there needs to be a certain level of awareness and a level of detachment, because if you're stuck in that perpetual state of thought, if you're attached to every thought that's coming into your consciousness, you're not aware, you're attached to everything, and there is no you to choose. But when you really have that anchor of mindfulness and you have the ability to observe thoughts more frequently, then you can actually hold with the anchor to pick and choose between what thoughts that you can rather focus on or let go of. And it's that famous quote from Viktor Frankl: between stimulus and response, there's ability to choose. And that ability to choose is mindfulness. It's the anchor of, right, I'm aware of what's happening in the external environment, or in the internal environment in this case, and I'm going to find some space between me and my thoughts, and I'm going to be able to choose which ones I want to pursue or which ones to let go of. So once you've built up that initial awareness and that initial anchor of mindfulness, now it's about contemplating and observing where the thought comes from and how that thought emerges and how it feels within your body. So thoughts that are rather useful or thoughts that are detrimental to you come from two places. The useful ones come from a place of abundance and a place of wanting to better yourself. And even the useful ones can have a dark context. They have a context of it can be a healthy shame. It can be like, oh, I'm feeling really fat or flabby and chubby. But it can come from a different sort of place, and you'll notice it in your body when you have thoughts of wanting to improve yourself. Is like, oh, I'm not in good shape right now, but there's something I can work towards. It feels more motivating, it feels more compassionate, it feels more fulfilling. Whereas the thoughts that you need to let go of are them extremely negative, self-critical thoughts that are based in shame. And when them thoughts emerge into consciousness and they kind of fulfill your mind, you notice that your body language goes a bit inwards, and you feel more shamed. You feel the heaviness within your body, and it's like the thoughts kind of carry their own momentum, and they carry their own kind of force within them. And it's being able to feel that when I get these thoughts, how does it make me feel? Is the thoughts of wanting to go to the gym, is it coming out of a place of abundance, of wanting to improve my life and to get healthy so I can be sharp mentally and I can be healthy? Or is it coming from a place of, I've just seen someone walk down the street who was muscly, and compared to him, I'm in really bad shape and I hate the way I look? And you can follow the trail. So when the thoughts arise, kind of feel how that thought is. At the same time that thought emerges and it's it's sitting in your consciousness, how does it feel within your body? And try and get in touch with whether it be shame or whether it be abundance and growth. And all thoughts really emerge from beliefs that inherently are sitting within our subconscious. And these beliefs are all coming from a place of protection. They're all trying to protect and help us survive out in the world. The negative, shame-ridden thoughts that are coming up in your mind are just coming from a younger version of you that felt like he needed to think like that, or he needed to act in accordance with them thoughts to survive, because he never got mirrored from his parents growing up, or he never felt accepted for who he was. So he had to kind of adapt to survival personality. So they're all coming from a good place, and even the shameful thoughts versus the what we perceive as the good thoughts, or the thoughts to help us, they're all trying to help us. But the shame-ridden thoughts, the kind of depressive thoughts that sit in our mind and try to self-hate and self-criticize, you got to realize that they are just not faulty perceptions, but they're perceptions of a younger you who doesn't quite have the intellectual knowledge or the wisdom of you right now. And it's a part of you that kind of needs to be shown compassion and shown love for. So you just need to be able to like notice them all, again, have that anchor of awareness, and be able to discern between what thoughts I want to inhabit now and what thoughts I maybe need to dig into later to see if I can not change them, but to see if I can show compassion towards a part of me that is birthing out them thoughts. But mostly it is just having that awareness and feeling it in your body when the thoughts emerge of, is this a good feeling, or is this a shame-ridden, like, negative feeling? And just going from there and just becoming aware again, guys. Like, awareness is key. Number 2 is, what does intellectual freedom mean to you, and how do you cultivate it? Whoa. Intellectual freedom, for me, is the ability to clearly articulate a train of thought that has been birthed from ideas, but has been cultivated into your own perception. And what I mean by that is, we go through life, and to acquire intelligence, to acquire wisdom, to acquire knowledge, we must observe other people. We must read other people's books. We must watch other people out in the world. We must have conversations with people, and we pick up people's ideas as we go, and then we relate their ideas through our own experience. Where the actual intellectual freedom comes from is relating that through your own experience, and not just attaching to other people's ideas and believing that they're right. What a lot of people do, especially in the information age that we live in, is they hear ideas, people tell them things, and they just inherently believe that that's true without actually doing any analysis or any critical thinking for themselves. And that critical thought, that relaying it through your own perception, your own experience, and acting it out in the world, and maybe like trying to find counter arguments without your own pursuit of trying to challenge that idea or to apply it into your life, it just becomes an ideology. It just becomes something that you inherently believe is true without actually critically thinking about it. And I think the actual freedom, the intellectual freedom, comes from relaying all the knowledge through your own experience and embodying that knowledge out into the world, and then developing your own unique experiential knowledge through that. It's kind of finding the abstracts, is finding the ideas and finding them into trying to put them into a way that fits into your life and your own framework of understanding. And I found that the more I read, the more I can start to believe that everything I read is true. And because I'm coming across so much profound knowledge, what seems profound, I start like relaying that information as it is true, but just to slow down, to take time to apply knowledge and the information that you consume, and then to try and fit it into your own framework, what feels right for you, what seems to like suit into your world. And then finding counter arguments for that seems to help, and that gives you intellectual freedom, because it means you're not trapped in by ideologies or false beliefs. It means that you're detached in a way, like the idea doesn't become you. The idea, like you let the idea immerse in you and you let it kind of live through you, but you have a level of detachment because you realize that the idea isn't you, it's just this idea, and you're trying to like bring that idea into your ego awareness, into your consciousness, and trying to formulate it into a framework of understanding through your own actions and experiences, and through further reading, and through trying to like disprove it. So intellectual freedom comes from testing, comes from having a level of detachment and a lot of critical thinking. And intellectual freedom is massive because it stops you from just believing in things that aren't true, or just believing in things that people tell you are true. You will notice that a lot of people out there in the world don't think things through properly, and me included. These podcasts definitely help, and journaling and doing my own reading helps, but a lot of people attach to ideas, whether it be from they watch the mainstream news, or they just grew up in a society that inherently believed certain ways of living, and they act out and they speak them beliefs as if they are fundamental truths, when in actuality there's been no Socratic questioning into that. There's been no questioning of, is this common sense? Is this actually true? Or is there a different way of thinking about things? They haven't had that ability to separate themselves from the belief, and the belief has been inherently ingrained into them, and now they live that out. And this is what the habitus is. If you look at society, people just live out the societal messages, and we kind of come drones. We kind of come like CPUs. We not CPUs. What's it called in games where like the characters? I can't remember. I haven't played video games in years, guys. But like the characters that you used to see that are just sitting there and they're just coded. That's what you see, a lot of coded people walking around because, yeah, they just haven't critically thought for themselves. They've not embodied what it is to have intellectual freedom. So number 3 is, how do you train your mind to adapt to change and uncertainty? This is interesting. So I've done a lot of different jobs and I've had a lot of different experiences the last couple of years, just through traveling and putting myself in different situations. I've done like door-to-door sales jobs. I've done jobs working in schools. I've done this. I've done that. I've done Muay Thai training. I've done all these different things, this meditation retreat, all these things that have put me in uncertainty, moving to different countries. And I've always found that when I first get there, there's an overwhelming sense of it's a lot to take in. And there's a lot going on, and it can be stressful. Like things can feel overwhelming, and you can kind of lose the ability just to like be where you are. Everything can move very quick, and you can get caught up in like very reactionary processes. As I said before, the gap between stimulus and response, there can be so much new stimulus coming in that you really do lose the ability to respond. And the thing I like about this, the thing I like about when this happens, is you see who you truly are when you go into uncertainty. Because when you become comfortable, you respond in the same habitual ways, and you end up living these habituated actions out and they become your life, because everything's comfortable and you know how to act and behave and survive in each situation that happens. Whether you've been working at the same job for a while, whether you live at your family home, or you live in your town that you've always grew up in, you know everything feels comfortable to you. So you've ingrained habits, you've ingrained ways of behaving, and now you're living them out. And because there's not any friction, because there's no uncertainty, there's no reason to challenge the ways you live, there's no reason to challenge the habits. You just get stuck kind of moving from week to week, and it seems to go very quick. Everything seems to kind of like you can't quite grasp it with your hands. And the thing what happens when you go to change or uncertainty is you have to adapt. You put different stressors onto your mind, and you see in this unconscious process how you actually behave in different situations, and you learn a lot about yourself. So how do I train my mind to adapt to change and uncertainty? Is to embrace failure, and to embrace anxiety, and to embrace the feeling of being confused and feeling lost, because the confusion, the lostness, the not knowing what to do, is where you really see what you're truly capable of, and you see how you adapt and respond to different situations. And there's jobs that I've done. I definitely look at this door-to-door sales job I did, where like I was so out of my comfort zone, and sometimes I really wanted to give up, and eventually I found out it wasn't for me. But I put myself through the paces, and I was like, right, what are you made of, Alex? Let's see how you act and adapt. And you grow massively from the change and uncertainty. And so how do you train your mind? Is just train yourself to love the process of being uncomfortable, because we need one foot in chaos and one foot in order. And without the foot in chaos, there is no growth, unfortunately. And too much order can make your life feel too structured, where you have no spontaneity or no excitement. So to train your mind is to put yourself in them situations, is to harden yourself to what it is to have change, but then also just to love the process of getting things wrong and being out your comfort zone, because it is where the real growth comes from. Number 4 is, what role does creativity play in your mental well-being? And to be honest with you, I have a severe lack of creativity at the moment. I would say this podcast is a kind of creative pursuit, because everyone's creativity, we normally define creativity as arts, or something arty, or something like visual, or you do painting or whatever. But creativity can be anything from creating content to like moving your body to fitness. And so creativity in the sense of like art or pure expression, I kind of struggle with. But my creativity comes from the podcast. It comes from training. It comes from moving my body in certain ways, and it keeps me stable. It keeps me anchored. So this podcast, especially, and I'd recommend people who think like me, maybe overanalyze things, who love getting stuck in the intellectual side. You try doing something similar to this, because it allows the creativity, it allows the thought process to find a way its manifestation in the real world. And for me, this is just every week I can sit down and I can challenge myself to do a podcast of an hour or 50 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it may be, and really challenge my intellectual understanding, but also to think critically about things. And that's how this form of creativity helps me. It helps me find comfort and solace in the fact that the things I'm learning, the things I'm reading, they do actually resonate with people, and they help me, and I can articulate them, and I'm understanding them. So creativity it really gives me a strong mental, just give me a bit of like purpose and a bit of like, yes, I'm doing something right. That's what creativity does for me. Number 5 is, how do you differentiate between productive thinking and over analysis? Sorry, I'll read that again. How do you differentiate between productive thinking and over analysis? Very similar to the first question. You've got to understand that the thought process, you have no control over it. Like, thoughts just emerge into your consciousness. And if thoughts are just emerging into your consciousness and they're overwhelming you with the same ideas over and over again, it's part of you that's signaling that you need to maybe make changes, or you actually need to take action, or you need to pay attention to things. And so productive thinking and overanalysis, I wouldn't really see it like that, to be honest with you. I think whatever thoughts are emerging into your mind are probably thoughts that need attention to them. And you can obviously overanalyze in the state of like a social situation where like you're going into a social situation and you're overanalyzing how you're looking and how you're coming across and how you're doing this. Or it could be a new job that you're going to. Should I do this? Should I do that? But honestly, I think if you're overanalyzing everything and it's becoming like a common theme in your mind where you have to analyze every situation you go into, I think you just need to find some mindfulness and a gap between your thoughts again, and just to realize like what thoughts do really need paying attention to, and which thoughts the context of them kind of can be ignored for a little bit. And it's maybe getting clear on your values, getting clear on where you want to go in life and what is important for you right now, and maybe just sacrificing the rest for a minute and focusing on the couple of really emerging thoughts that seem to be like consistent and seem to be always there. Whether that be you want a new job and you're over analyzing the fact of, I want a new job, I hate my job, what job can I get? And that seems to be the main theme of your mind right now. Obviously find some mindfulness, journal about this, try and find what is the main theme of your thoughts. It might be that you really want a partner, you really want a close relationship, you really want to get good in social situations. Try and understand what the main context of your thoughts is, and then you can only really have one true desire. You can have a couple of things that you're working towards, but there's going to be one major overarching theme that you can really focus on, because we've got a finite amount of energy, we've got a finite amount of time. We can only really put our time on so much things. So try and find the overarching thing, the most important value for you right now, and then deal with that problem. And kind of the over-analyzation of everything else, just learn to ignore it for a minute. Just learn to like rather just not stagnate, but kind of just maintain all that stuff. Maintain the over-analysis, like kind of try and keep it quiet through meditation or just a little bit of mindfulness, and really put your attention on this one thing that you think, for the next 6 months, for the next year, I'm really going to focus on this. Because 6 months to a year's time comes very quick. And if you can really dedicate your time to that one thing and cut over the other over-analysis, then I think it's going to be really beneficial for you. And let yourself overanalyze about the one thing that you really want to achieve, because you want this one thing, you kind of want it to submerge you. You want to be submerged into it and get really obsessed about it, because that is the thing that you're tackling right now. But the rest of it, just kind of try and let go. I know it's easier said than done, and if the context of your mind is really messy right now, that can be extremely hard. But just realize that the progress works one step at a time, and the more you can just focus on one focal point and move towards that, the rest will kind of structure itself towards that goal, and it'll really help you. Number 6 is, what's a mental exercise or practice you use to calm anxiety or overthinking? Meditation for sure. For me, it's like if I can just find a way to sit down for 20 to 30 minutes a day and just sit there and observe my thoughts, the overthinking quietens down. And sometimes you can't shut it down. You can't stop yourself from overthinking. The whole idea of stopping yourself from overthinking is just going to aggravate the overthinking, and you get caught in the anxiety loop or the self-hatred loop of beating yourself up for overthinking, but then you're actually overthinking about overthinking, or you're beating yourself up about anxiety and you get an anxiety about your anxiety. So you need to find time just to let your mind like get rid of everything it needs to get rid of. And a mental exercise is rather journaling or meditation, something that just allows the inbox of your brain just to quiet down a little bit. And I find when I get into transpersonal states, by that I mean the quieter, calmer states of mind that you access through meditation, or when you get in really a deep journaling session and you feel like you've just kind of like wiped your mind and you feel really calm, that calmness seems to reinvigorate your body and your mind, and it seems to stop the overthinking and calm the anxiety. So meditation and journaling are really important for this. Also, it is to say a mental exercise, but just go for a walk. Go for a walk just clears your mind so much. It's really ancient like things that we've been doing for thousands of years. Very simple. It's just observe your mind, go for a walk, move the body, and just write down things, kind of clear the information that's in your brain and put it onto a bit of paper. Humans are meant for creating ideas, not for maintaining them. And if you can just get all of your thoughts, all the collective thoughts that are sitting in your mind and you're all muddled and confused, if you can get them out onto a bit of paper and you can kind of maybe elaborate on them and question them and get a bit deeper to where them thoughts are coming from, then yeah, that will calm the anxiety, it will calm the overthinking. So yeah, just get a journal, sit on a mat and meditate, and that will really alleviate a lot of the symptoms. It's not actually that hard to solve 80% of our problems. It just takes a quiet mind and an ability to be still. Number 7 is, how do you align your daily goals with your long-term vision? Oh, that's hard. It's very difficult right now because I don't have a long-term vision, and I know that goes contradicts a lot of what self-improvement says, but I think as I'm in this self-inquiry stage of trying to understand who I am, I'm doing a lot of shadow work at the moment, a lot of psychological, like deep psychological trauma work. I've not got a long-term vision because I don't really know who I am and where I want to go, and I'm trying to find that through going into the basement of my unconscious. And I feel like the ambition and the drive comes from clearing out the unconscious. I spoke about this last week. So like dealing with the trauma, understanding and becoming aware of the context of your past and how you grew up and how the societal structure influenced you and how your parents maybe neglected you or didn't do the right things for you growing up, like understanding all that stuff and the lower unconscious, the basement stuff of the lower unconscious, and then that will open up the higher unconscious attributes of what it is to have a long-term vision and ambition and clarity and purpose. But like my long-term vision right now is to understand myself, is to become more enlightened. Not the fact that I'm trying to reach enlightenment, but I'm just trying to become more whole. I'm trying to integrate all the parts of me and become aware of them and build an ego that is aware of all this, build an ego awareness. And so how I kind of align all of my daily goals into that long-term vision is just to do things that are going to make me feel more whole, do things that are going to make me get further, like build further awareness and become more intellectually understanding and have a more loving, compassionate curiosity for myself. And I do that by looking after my body, looking after my mind, feeding it with the right food, feeding it with the right information, making sure I'm doing the correct movement, make sure I'm not giving into self-destructive habits. And when I do, understanding where that comes from. It's just having a loving compassion and treating myself as someone who deserves to be treated well. Just as if you was a life coach or if you was a therapist, you would look at your client and help them and show compassion and give them advice and want them to do the right things. Flip that own intention on yourself and be that for yourself. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. And I think that's how you can align your goals with your long-term vision. If you have a long-term vision, I don't really want to give this advice because I don't have a long-term vision, so I don't know. But if you do have a long-term vision, just break it down into subcomponents of goals. Like have that goal, try and articulate it as clear as possible in terms of where you want to be and where you don't want to be. And then break that down, break the subcomponents of that goal down and think, what will my life look like in 6 months if I want to get closer to this goal, and then a year, and then 2 years, and have like very strong points of the journey that you can reach, and that will make it feel more tangible, and it will help you break down the small actions of the daily goals into the bigger goals. But be careful, people, setting yourself long-term visions, because a lot of us are very lost and confused of who we are, and we're very easily influenced by societal pressures, by the information we read, and you can quite easily live a life that's very unintentional by just adopting certain beliefs about what you think is the right thing to do, and you should value money, so now I'm going to do this for money, or I should value a good physique because everyone's being bodybuilders now on the internet, so maybe I should do that. And it can take you down a path that doesn't actually align with who you are, and the fuel will burn, and then you'll just be older and more lost. So be careful about these long-term visions and kind of sit back and be willing to be a bit lost. There's freedom in being lost. It can be confusing, it can be hard, but it's okay if you don't know what to do right now. It's not just you, it's me. And as long as you're doing the right things in terms of trying to understand yourself, and you're trying to build awareness and compassion, and you've really got this intention of trying to be the best version of you possible, things will figure themselves out, and life will figure itself out. And just trust the process of time. So number 8 is, what do you do to unlearn limiting beliefs that hold you back? For just the limiting beliefs, that there's 2 kind of modalities I'll use. First is like cognitive behavioral therapy. Sometimes I'll literally, there's 3 modalities I'll use. Cognitive behavioral therapy. So sometimes I'll just start using Socratic questioning, asking myself why to the thoughts and the beliefs that I hold in my mind. So say if I've got this thought that keeps coming up, going, this girl thinks I'm weird, or when I speak to her, or I think she's thinking I'm weird, or every time I get anxious when I go into the gym, I try and understand what are the thoughts that are arising from them situations, whether it be speaking to the pretty girl, or walking into the gym, or not being able to go for a new job and pursue a career. I try and understand what are the situations, and then what are my beliefs around that? What do I think around that situation? And then I will actually start to understand where that's coming from and where these beliefs are coming from. And then I use the kind of the cognitive behavioral process of trying to find the beliefs, but then I also use parts work, so using the idea of the sub-personalities of where these beliefs are coming from is not just one form of consciousness, not one personality, but they're coming from the subcomponents of personalities that reside within my brain. The complex is like I might have a part of me that wants to achieve and then another part of me that's scared and doesn't want to achieve, and so then it's using CBT on the subcomponents of personalities and trying to understand each part of me and show it compassion and show it love, and through that process of understanding and awareness, I can integrate the sub-personalities, and I can get their ideas and their goals and their drives, and I can bring them into my awareness, and I can try and iron out the contradictions, because we are just full of contradictions. Like, I can say sometimes that I want to be rich and I want to have a really famous podcast and I want to do all this and that, but then the next day I sit down and I don't want to write a podcast out. I don't want to sit down and record an episode, and I'm like, that is a contradiction, because part of me wants this and part of me wants that. And the key word there is part. We are made up of subcomponents of personality, many different personalities. And so by using the Socratic questioning, you can kind of dialect with the parts of yourself and understand why they're perceiving the world in certain ways. And I find this really helpful, because I start understanding that there's just a younger part of me that doesn't feel confident enough to go and to achieve this, but then I've also got this ambitious part of me, this drive, this personality within me that thinks he can achieve everything in the world and that he's amazing. And how can I help these two kind of get on a similar path, not to integrate them into one, but how can I help them show compassion for each other and work something out? And that's how I kind of do it. I'm kind of like the counselor in my own mind, trying to direct everything, and ultimately I have control. But if I try and put too much control on these things, I end up suppressing them and they hide within me, and then they come out in my subconscious actions. So my job is to show compassion for everyone and try and iron out the contradictions, and let's get everyone working on the same level. And then the last bit is just kind of feeling the limiting beliefs in my body. Like, is every time I get anxiety and I have this limiting belief I'm not good enough, is it like sitting within my heart? Is it sitting within the sweatiness of my palms? Does my brain fog go crazy? And just understanding the somatic the somatic experience of what it is to have a limiting belief. And I feel like feeling into the sensations helps the energy dissipate. And I feel like the thoughts are attached to energy, and like thoughts, as I've said before, I feel like they emerge from your body. We have like energy and kind of trauma that gets held in our body, and the thoughts kind of emerge from that. And I feel like if you can really feel into the sensations and feel what it feels like, the thoughts dissipate. They have no longer the strong effects that they have. So yeah, there's just some ways of how I learn unlimited beliefs. I hope that was helpful. I do find as I'm doing these podcasts again, my ability to articulate myself is coming back, and I love it. For anyone who does want to articulate themselves better, just start recording a podcast and read a load of these things. For anyone who's not watching the video, it's a book. the great tools for learning the English language. Number 9 is, how does your mindset influence the way you handle relationships? My mindset helps me handle relationships in a very compassionate way. I think one thing I do very well, and not to, I don't want to go into my personal relationships, but like the actual context of it, because I don't really feel comfortable sharing it. But one way I find that helps me handle relationships is I have a curiosity that's built into me, which I really want to understand other people. I see a lot of good in people, and I think sometimes it can be at the detriment to me, because I struggle to see the negative of people, or the times where people are maybe being malice, because I really do believe that we're all not intentionally being bad people, and there isn't bad people out there, and I've just not come across them yet, and I think it might be a downfall for me later on. But I see the inherent good in everyone, and I really have a compassion even when people do things wrong. I'm like, oh, that's fine, they didn't do that on purpose. And it helps me handle relationships, because I really want to help people. I like being people's like therapist, or like just like mimicking a life coach. I love hearing people's problems, and I handle relationships in that way. I'm just like, I want to hear people's problems, and I set boundaries, and I set expectations. Like, I like my own space. I like my time to do things, and like in my actual relationship, in my intimate relationship, I set boundaries there. I have in terms of like, I respect my own time, and I'm like, no, I need to do this for myself, or I need to do that. And then for me, I have to make sure I give time back to the relationship, and it's just setting boundaries, and then it's having that curiosity, and it's just being compassionate. So boundaries, compassion, and curiosity, they're the 3 things that are really going to help you handle your relationships in your life. And if you have a relationship and you feel like you're trapped, or they're in control of you, it's just because you haven't set boundaries. You haven't been clear with what you actually want, and you're not being truthful with them. But more importantly, you're not being truthful with yourself. And that is the hardest thing to do, because there can be a lot of shame around, or if I tell her this, she's going to hate me, and I don't want her to feel like this. But you need to do what's right for you. So you need to find the balance between finding your own time and also having your boundaries and doing the things that make you feel good. And that is something you learn as you go, but you need to set the boundaries there. You need to have boundaries within your mind that respect the core of you, that want to do the things that you want to do. Because if not, you just lose yourself to a relationship. And at that point, what is the point? So number 10, how do you measure progress in your mental growth journey? I don't think you do. I think measuring progress sometimes can feel, it can get you in the productivity cycle where you're always trying to better yourself. You're always concerned with how much better you're getting, or you're doing this or you're doing that. So I really find that trying to measure progress can be very self-destructive. The key indicators for me of when I know I'm doing well are just a bigger awareness and a more authentic living, and you feel that. That's not a measurement, it's not an abstraction, it's a feeling. And I feel like in your mental growth journey, you can really tell when you're making progress by just living authentically, or being more you, or feeling more alive, feeling more of your feelings, like feeling more depressed but then feeling more happy, and being willing to go to the ends of the polarities of emotions, and feeling the negative emotions but also feeling the positives. And it's just an anchor within your life that you know that you're progressing. And like right now, sometimes I feel like my life can be quite bleak in terms of like, I just live my day and not much happens, and I don't really feel the extreme of the emotions, and that sometimes can make me feel like I'm not progressing. But I know that I'm intentionally putting in the work, and I am opening myself up slowly. So I'm not trying to measure the progress. I'm just like, when the feelings do come up, when the anger comes up of my situation, or the depression, or the anxiety, or the happiness, or the excitement, I'm just more willing to feel that. And for me, that is how I'm measuring the progress. So number 11, and we're on to body now, is what does physical alignment mean to you, and how do you work towards it? Good question. Physical alignment to me means that your body functions properly, first of all, in terms of like it can do what a body needs to do. It can move in the way the body needs to move. If you ever listen to Ido Portal, the guy who trained Conor McGregor for the Jose Aldo fight in UFC, he didn't train him just the UFC part, but he did a load of movement stuff and a load of animal movement. And his whole philosophy is kind of like from Taoism and some Chinese martial arts, which is like, let the flow of energy move through you, and you should just be like a portal for the energy. And like, you should be able to move in all different directions. Your body should be able to do everything. And the human body is extremely adaptable. So for me, physical alignment just means being able to sit in a squat position, which actually I can't do right now. So this is paradoxical, but this is something I'm not paradoxical. This is it's very rich of me to say this, but it's something I'm aiming towards. To be able just to move properly and to feel like your body's balanced correctly, and you're immobile and you're flexible, and you just feel good in your body. Physical alignment is the fact that you just feel fluid and you can move properly, and you can be like a vessel for the energy to move through you and be an expression. But that's what I really think is what is physical alignment. Number 12 is, how do you cultivate self-compassion on the days where your body feels less capable? This is a tough one. If you're a gym rat like myself, when you go into the gym on the days where you're just not performing, or things aren't going your way, and like you can't perform the exercises you normally perform, or you're not lifting as heavy as you normally lift, it's very easy to beat yourself up and overanalyze the situation and be like, oh, did I get a lack of sleep? Did I do this? Did I do that? But for me, it's just accepting the fact that at least I turned up to the gym. At least I'm doing something. Well, at least I'm doing some form of movement. And even if your body doesn't feel good enough to go to the gym and you go for a walk, it's just keeping up that habit in your mind. It's really ingrained in that identity of like, I am someone who exercises, and really attaching to that identity. There's certain identities that we want to live through. There's certain perspectives that we really want to live through, and to be healthy and to exercise is one of them. So have compassion in the fact that like, yeah, maybe I can't work out today and I can't get muscle growth, but I'm turning up for myself in a healthy way. I'm going for a walk. It's doing something, even if you can just do a little, and maybe that's the right thing for you to do. Showing compassion with the fact that, yeah, at least I turned up. And I wouldn't even say at least. Sometimes your body needs rest. So actually respecting your body and doing less means that you're showing self-compassion for yourself. It's because you're looking at the longer picture. You're not trying to beat yourself up and rush to the end goal. You're doing it in a healthy, integrated way, which is going to like create an identity of, I am someone who exercises. And self-compassion is so important with that. It's just accepting when your body feels like it needs a rest and being okay with that, and then moving forward. Number 13 is, what is your favorite way to connect with nature and recharge physically? My favorite way is just grounding, is literally going for a hike, going for a walk, taking your shoes off, taking your socks off, and letting your feet touch the ground. Even if it's muddy, even if it's wet, like you feel like a little kid. It's one of them things that when you ground yourself, you realize that, wow, I'm actually connected to the earth. Like I'm something that emerged from the earth. Like I'm part of the soil. I'm part of this whole ecosystem. And because we wear shoes and we have all these like we have all this rubber that stops us from touching the feet, and we're always on concrete and we're always in these four walls in a house, like we feel very disconnected from our actual habitat of where we spent millions of years evolving from. Like you think of the actual span of human history, that we've always been out in nature. We've always been outside. We've always been touching the grass. We've been out with the animals. We've been with the plants. We've always lived in nature. And to not like let your feet touch the floor, and your feet are the things that connect you to the ground. And if you've got things on your feet that are stopping you from touching the ground, you physically touching the ground, then you're obviously going to feel disconnected from it all. And that's where like a lot of people live up within their minds. They live up as this like schizoid feeling of like a narrative in their mind, and that they're very like disconnected, and they feel disembodied. But like to touch the floor, it makes you feel more embodied. It brings you back to the ground, and you feel like you're just a continuation of the earth. And it's that feeling of getting back to one with nature, getting back to one with reality, instead of being up in our ego, up in this narrative that tries to separate us away from it all. And it grounds you. Like, it's called grounding for a reason. It makes you realize that you are on the ground and you exist in the world. And nature is one of the most calming things, and that recharges you physically, recharges you mentally, and it just makes you feel accepted. Because nature has a very good way of creating a unifying center for you. It has this nature has this nature about it. It has this very special feeling of just acceptance and belonging. And when you really connect with nature and you go somewhere and you look out at the stars or you touch the grass, you see like birds flying in the air, you're looking at a really nice view. It's a calmness, it's a peacefulness, and it allows it's a safe container for you to just to calm down and be peaceful and to let the real you come out. And it's a very good external unifying center to let the empathic response of you come out and live through you. So number 14 is, how do you set realistic yet challenging goals for your physical health? I push myself to do things that are different, that are outside of my box of reference. So I started training first. I was doing like HIIT training, and then I went to the gym and trained bodybuilding. And once I did bodybuilding for a while, and I put on the size that I wanted to put on, like initially, I did my first bulking and cutting cycle, and I got in pretty good shape. I put on like a decent amount of size. I'm not the biggest of people, but that's not my goal. As soon as sorry guys, I keep burping. I'm eating a lot of food because, to be honest with you, I am bulking right now. So like I can feel a lot full and I'm burping loads, which is minging. But yeah, like how I set myself goals is like once I feel like I've not mastered something, but I'm getting comfortable and stable, I change things up and I start doing calisthenics. I learn how to do muscle ups and gym rings. Then once I've learned that, I start like researching mobility training and doing something else, and then flexibility, and then I'll start doing animal movements. And I'm always trying to change things and always trying to do something new. And I think through that, you cultivate this mindset of functional training where you want to do everything well. And that makes it difficult because you're never actually just linearly progressing at one thing. You're always moving off in different like directions, and people can see this as a bad thing because you don't make progress. But for me, that just makes you a better human being. It's more exciting to try and do loads of things, and then you've always got things you can get better at because you know how to do so many things. So you can make your training so complex and so differentiated between, like, compared to what normal people train, because you know so many different things, and that can make it challenging. It can make it's realistic because you set yourself goals within the boundaries of what you know you can do, but it's also challenging because you've got all these different facets that you can learn, and it keeps that curiosity there. It's that excitement of I know something new, let's try something new. It's like I learned how to do muscle ups, and then I was learning how to do levers, and then I was like, do you know what, I'm going to go and do mobility training. So I was learning mobility training. I was like, this is exciting. And then something else pops up. I was like, animal movements, and I started doing animal movements, and I'm like, I don't know, it's just exciting. Keeps things really engaging. Question number 16 is, how do you listen to your body's whispers before they become shouts? Whoa, what question. Stillness again. I keep answering the same thing over and over again, but like, it is being quiet enough to pull yourself away from the narratives of the thoughts that are going on in your mind. And say if your body does need a rest, it's like, I can feel this slight feeling in my body. Maybe I've just got this one injury that like bugging me a little bit. Like, that's my body telling me it needs something, and listening to that and being willing to pull myself away from the goal pursuit of, I want to get shredded, I want to be in shape, I want to do this, I want to do that. Wherever it is, your body has a lot of wisdom within it, and it can tell you sometimes that you just need more sleep, and that can just be a tiredness throughout the day, and that can be a whisper to you saying, just like, mate, go bed early tonight, please. But then you sit there on your phone scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through whatever, and then you don't go to bed till late, and then throughout the next day, the whisper becomes louder and louder and louder, and eventually it becomes a burnout, or it becomes an extreme shout where your body's under extreme stress. So it's just being quiet enough and observant enough to kind of watch yourself live through life. And when you do that, when you kind of like sometimes abstract yourself and look at yourself third person and just watch how you behave and watch how you feel and watch how your body is reacting, then you get more in tune with the whispers, and the whispers are there just to help you. So number 18 is, how has your understanding of fitness evolved beyond aesthetic? I went through this last video, so I don't really want to go for it too much, but I just train functional now, just to be able to move my body correctly. And that is what functional fitness is for me. It's to be able to move correctly and to be able to maybe run a marathon, but then do a muscle up and do a 100 kg squat, like be able to do everything, and not everything extremely well, but just be a very functional human. And the aesthetics will follow when you do that anyway. So yeah, that's everything for body, guys, because I think some of the questions are very similar to the ones I answered last week. So the last section we're on now is soul, and we've got another 10 more questions and then we'll be done. So question number 21 is, what's a moment in your life that felt deeply connected to something greater? When I was in my meditation retreat, so this was day 6. So just for a bit of context on the meditation retreat, this is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It's done with a technique of Vipassana. And first of all, you learn a technique called Anapana, which is you focus on the kind of the bit underneath your nose and above your lip, and that little bit there. You focus on that, and just focus on the sensations, and you can feel your breath coming in and out of your nose and passing through that part. And you really train your focus to focus on that part of your nose, right, and the underneath your nose. And this was like day 4. They eventually teach you Vipassana, so you do that for the first 3.5 days, and then halfway through day 3, they teach you a different technique, which derives from the teachings of the Buddha, and it's to be able to scan your bodily sensations. So you start from a focal point on the top of your head, and you train your point of focus to go down your body and down your face and down blah blah blah, and then up again. So you're scanning up and down your body, and you're doing this and that. You're doing this for 10 days, just for train for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time. You're really focusing on the sensations of your body and of your face and of your hands and whatever it is. And eventually what happens is you get so aware of the sensations in your body that you detach yourself away from the sensations, and you realize you are just the conscious observer to all of this. And I've had it in deep meditation before. I've had it with certain psychoactive compounds, but this day 6 of the meditation retreat, there was a point where like I had a really sore sensation in my knee, because obviously you're sitting there and like you're just sitting there cross-legged for like 10 hours a day, 11 hours a day, and it's extremely painful. And you just got to learn to like pull yourself away from the pain and realize that pain, that pain is just an interpretation, and the actual pain itself doesn't hurt, but it's the anticipation of the pain. It's the anticipation of it hurting in a microsecond and hurting and hurting and hurting that causes it suffering. The actual sensation of itself, without any label on it, is just a sensation, just like any other sensation. And so eventually I got to the point where I detached myself away from this pain, and I remember the identity of this like locus of consciousness that is in my mind just dissipated, and I suddenly felt myself blow up into the whole room. And at this point I had like the whole room surrounding me. There's people meditating to the left of me, to the right of me, behind me, in front of me, and I had this overwhelming feeling of there was no difference between me and the people around me. I felt the same love for the people around me as I did for myself, and it was this pure place of compassion and wholeness. And I really understood the fact that we are all connected, and we are all just the same consciousness that resides through eternity. And if you really think about it in like a scientific point of view, we all come from the same bundle of molecules and atoms and matter that exploded from the Big Bang. We're all from that, and within that energy source must have been the whole universe. You were in that, I was in that, because we've been created from that, and the universe perpetuated from that. So we're all from within that energy, and I really felt that we are all just in this together. We're all just one. And yeah, that was the first time where I remember even just having like so much compassion and so much like this insight into how much love there was out there and how much we're missing out on. That like it actually made me cry in the meditation retreat. And I used to be very against this sort of stuff, but when you have experiences like that, when you have psychoactive compounds that show you again that like put you into that feeling of oneness, like I can't deny it. I can't deny that exists. I've experienced it. I know it exists. It's like it's not an intellectual knowing. I have experienced that, and it was no delusion. It was no my mind pretending things. For me, it was knowledge. It was it was wisdom that came from a fundamental truth, a core truth of like we all are connected and we all are loved. And I think if we could tap into them states more, if we could all at least experience them states a couple times in our life, I think it allows you to have a baseline of okayness and compassion for people. And yeah, I'm really grateful for the experiences I've had with psychedelics or meditation. Number 22 is, how do you define authenticity and how do you live it daily? Authenticity is the core you. It's the real you. It's the expression of the Atman, as the Hindus call it. So the Hindu, the way they see consciousness is we got an Atman, which is our sense, our self, but there is also a Brahman, which is the underlying Godhead, which is like consciousness, and the Atman and the Brahman are the same thing, but our feeling of being this individual, having an individual soul, is the Atman. And I feel like the authenticity is that emerging into your body and living out into the world without friction. That is being filtered into your ego healthily. And I think what inauthenticity is when we grow up and when we have childhood trauma and we live in a world that doesn't quite mirror us for who we actually are, our soul's journey into our body kind of gets fragmented, and because it's not a safe journey, we don't feel like it's safe to be within our bodies. Our soul kind of rejects coming into our body and comes up, and it goes back to where it came from, which is like the Brahman. And we formulate this ego that doesn't quite have the soulful being. It's not had the soul emerge into our ego, and we're living out like thoughts and narratives, and we're living out very fragmented. And to live authentically is to pierce through the fragmentations, is to feel seen and feel heard, and to let our soul kind of come back into our body and live out into the world and without friction. And it's incorporating the ego awareness into the soul, to the self with a capital S, as Jung calls it, is allowing that emerge into our body and into our ego awareness. Because our ego awareness is really important. The ego gets a lot of hate, but the ego is crucial. It's a part of us that helps us live out in the world and really formulates who we are as a person. We wouldn't be alive without the ego. But it's realizing that the ego needs to be incorporated with the greater self, and to allow that greater self through the ego and to live out into the world is what it means to live authentically. And I think it comes through like inspiration and curiosity. I feel like curiosity is a massive one, and the things you're interested in, that is your authenticity. So for me, it's to follow my interest and follow my curiosity. When I allow like the real core soul or the real authentic self of me to like be out in the world, it's when I follow my curiosities and I don't give in to the distractions on my phone, and I go home and read the book for 2 hours, and I do the podcast. Like I sat down and did this today. This feels like it's coming from a soulful place. You can probably tell by how like passionate I get when I talk and how quick I talk. I'm excited about this stuff. This stuff is cool. This is the stuff I like to talk about, and that comes from a soulful place for me. That is that comes from authenticity. It feels like I'm being authentic right now, and I don't have all the answers. I don't even really know what I'm doing, but this feels right for me. And when I read the books, when I'm reading at the moment, Healing the Child Within, like that feels like I'm doing the right thing. I'm reading the right book. And then I'm reading Siddhartha, which is like a story that parallels the Buddhas. And I'm like, yeah, this is cool. This is the stuff I want to read. I can sit there and read for 2 hours and I'm like, yeah, this is exciting. And so that for me shows like it's authentic. It's moving towards a place where my soul is allowing to live its own curiosity and unfold out into the world, into the material world as it wants. And I think if we all try to do that, even in little bits, the world will be a much better place. And to be inauthentic means to live from a place of survival, is to protect your soul and to like come from a place of like you don't feel safe out in the world, and people do that by chasing material pursuits, or they try and play the status game, but like it never feels quite right for you, and it's not very fun for anyone, because it's just You don't feel connected to it. You don't feel like it's not got any vibrance to it. It's not got any energy to it. But when you do something really enjoyable, like you go for a walk in nature, or you go and play a football game, or you do something you really enjoy, it's got an energy, it's like a vibrance to it. And like, do you know them things you get really excited about, you get really giddy about, and you just love? That's the stuff that's coming from that playful sense. It's coming from a soulful place. It's coming from a place of authenticity. And also, there is things that you don't want to do that can be a place, you can do that from a place of authenticity. But I think as long as it's aligned with the playfulness, then I think you can find the balance, and you can really live an authentic life. Sorry guys, I hope that made sense. That was a bit of a tricky question to actually like break down. 23 is, what's a small soulful practice that brings you joy every day? A small soulful practice that brings you joy every day is when I walk into a room and when I see people, is just being energetic and being happy and being like, yes, how is everyone, asking about people's days. Not having to put it on, but just asking about people's days, asking what they're doing when they get home, asking how their lives are going, just being curious about people. Even if I'm not feeling too great myself, I'm like, oh, how are you? Like, how's your life going? And for me, it just opens up that portal to a more important conversation. It opens up that portal to like someone actually cares about you, or someone you can have a conversation. And that just little soulful practice of just, hello mate, how are you? And like really showing an interest in people, it brings joy to my day, because it's not how far we travel, but it's the people we meet on the journey. And I think if you ignore the people you're meeting and you don't show a curiosity towards them, like, life becomes very dull. And I really do think that, that little practice of just, how are you, mate? Like, what's going on in your life? Are you okay? Do you want anyone to speak to? Like, what's going on? It just creates a better world for people. It really does. I really feel that as I'm saying that. I really feel the importance of like what it is just to ask someone if they're okay. Like, what's going on in your life, showing interest in them, because we all just want to talk about our own problems. We're all struggling through this journey on ourselves, and it's a soulful practice just to be curious about people. Number 24 is, how do you find beauty in ordinary moments? Very difficultly, to be honest. I don't always find beauty in ordinary moments, but I think once you are mindful, when you're in them states of mindfulness, when you're anchored to the present moment, you don't need to find beauty, because the beauty unravels itself, and you understand that the world is beautiful when you're not coming from a place of thought, you're not coming from a place of abstraction. And if you just look at how crazy things are, like, you can look up and see a tree and you can be like, that is mad that tree exists. Like, how does that even happen? What are the chances of me being here experiencing this tree? Like, what even is consciousness? How is all this happening? And that has got like this inherent beauty built into it. And I think when you can snap out of the perpetual state of thought, when you can stop yourself from being stuck, abstracting and thinking all the time, then I think the beauty reveals itself to you. The beauty is there. You don't have to find it. You just have to be willing to look at it. So the question, how do you find beauty? It's not something to find. It's something to realize. 25 is, what's a question you often ask yourself? You often ask yourself to reconnect with your purpose. Good question. A question I often ask myself is, this what I really want to do, or am I doing it for the sake of doing it? And when I say for the sake of doing it, sometimes we just get stuck with ideas that I have nothing else to do, so I'm just going to do this, or I'm doing this because this is what everyone else is doing. And that real question is this something you really want to do? Does it feel right for you to do this? I think it aligns me with the real sense of the purpose, because for me, that intuition, that feeling is more important than the abstraction, more important than the thought. And I can easily get lost doing things for the sake of doing it. But when it doesn't feel right, when I know I should be doing something, Like, that's how I align myself back with a purpose. It's asking yourself, what do you really want to do? And like, what do you actually really want to do? Not what are you just doing because you want to impress people, but like, what feels like an authentic expression of you? And when I think about it, it's like, I want to read a load of books. I want to attain a load of information. I want to like improve myself. That's exciting for me. To go into the gyms is exciting for me. To read shadow psychology and nutrition is exciting for me. They're things I really want to do. So that's my purpose. When I get lost going, I want to make money online and I want to be successful content creator. Like, no, that's not important for me. They're things that are coming from this place of trying to escape my situation now. But when I create content out of a place of I want to express my authenticity, I want to share my opinions, that feels more natural. So it's asking yourself, what do you really want to do? Is this something you really want to do? I think that's a really good way of connecting to your purpose. 26 is, how do you balance giving to others with nurturing your own spirit? This is really important for people who are in relationships, and I spoke about it before. It's setting boundaries and making sure that you give yourself the things that you need. First of all, at the fundamental of everything is looking after your health. If you're not eating clean, if you're not exercising, and if you're not sleeping well, and then you're neglecting these to spend time with other people, them other people are not only going to be getting suboptimal versions of you, but you're going to start resenting them because you're going to start feeling depressed, anxious. Your life's not going to be going the way you want to go it. And then you're going to project your frustration on your life onto them. And it's going to actually like break down the relationships and cause friction. So you just got to realize that like you have to give to yourself to give to others first, and being productive with your time and like being intentional with how you live your life so that you make the most of the time you have for yourself. So then you feel free to give time to other people, but it's being aware that like your time is finite, and you have to you have these relationships and these people, and you have yourself and your health. You have all these different components where you can place your time, and it's being intentional, like not overanalyzing like how much time, where your time needs to go and getting stuck and stressed about it, but just be intentional with the time you give to yourself and give to others, and make sure you do like block out time and set boundaries for yourself, so that you look after your health. Like you do things that like recharge you, because if you're constantly trying to fix other people, or if you're constantly giving people too much time and you're neglecting yourself, the projections are going to come, the frustrations are going to come, and you're going to externalize that and stop blaming it on other people, and then no one's going to want to be around you. That's how you end up being lonely and depressed and just not being a nice person to be around. So look after yourself. You are the most important person within your life, and the people that you're giving energy to, if you're not giving the energy, if you're not giving the equal amount of energy or even more energy to yourself, then how are you going to be a good influence on people's lives? How are you going to help other people? Like you need to make sure the core of you is protected and helped first. And that's all I can say on that. Like protect yourself, like give yourself boundaries and make sure that you are looking after yourself. 27 is, what's a soulful mantra or affirmation you turn to in tough times? Life presents you with people and circumstances to show you where you're not free. And I think when the critical self-shame comes, when the hard times do come, and in your mind it becomes to a point where like you can't find an escape, I think life has mirrored that circumstance or that person. It is to show you that, look, this is something that you need to deal with. This is something that is going on within your mind, and you're trapped within the framework of that thought, the framework of that emotion, the framework of that perception, whatever it may be, the framework of that trauma. Life kind of looks at, it's like there's something greater looking at you and going, do you know what? I think this circumstance will finally get into reveal this part of himself that he's unaware of. And I feel like life is this slowly unfolding process of showing you parts of yourself through circumstances and situations, and it's all about building awareness and building that bigger ego awareness to become more calm and more whole. So the soulful mantra I go to is, life presents you with people and circumstances to show you where you're not free. Number 28 is how do you connect with your intuition and trust its guidance? To listen to your intuition is a very difficult one because we live in a very like left hemisphere dominated society. It's very much like critical thinking, analytical thinking, and it can be very hard to get in touch with that feeling, that gut feeling, like that ancient wisdom of trust your gut. It's very difficult to be able to feel that. Getting quiet is number one. As I've said so many times, I always forget how important mindfulness is for me. But finding times for stillness, finding times in nature, finding times in just where you can let the thought process kind of quiet down. I think that's how I connect to my intuition. And like your intuition will be wrong a lot of the time. But I think 80% of the time it's right. 20% of the time it's wrong. And when it's wrong, it's really wrong. I remember Carl Jung saying this. Intuition can rather be spot on or extremely wrong, but most of the time it's spot on. And it's having that trust in the fact that our conscious awareness is not as smart as the systems and the processes that make up the conscious awareness. And we are made up of a lot of unconscious processes. Like look at our perception of the dominance hierarchy, the kind of the systems in our body that regulate where we sit in the social hierarchy, the systems in our body which regulate anger and emotions, and like they're things out of our control. They're out of our conscious awareness, and they are smart processes that are built up through millions of years of evolution. And the conscious awareness, the prefrontal cortex that got developed, which has allowed us to become self-aware, is very new compared to some of these ancient archaic systems. And it's just trusting the things that have been around for years and years and years, for millions of years, from billions of years, through the time of evolution. For the first start of evolution, they've accrued a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge, and that's where intuition comes from. It comes from the right hemisphere, the feeling. It comes from the body, from the gut. And honestly, that's been around a lot longer than the rational thought. So it's knowing that with age comes wisdom, and having trust in the fact that your intuition is it is a wise sense. It's a wise being that can direct you in the right way. It's just trusting that and knowing that it's got your back. It's not doing it it's not sending you and making you feel like that for a reason. There's something of importance behind it. Number 29. What's a way you nurture your soul that doesn't involve structured religion or practices? Movement of the body. Coming into my body again. Like I just love exercise and I love movement and I love just like letting the natural form of energy flow through me. And for me, like structured religion's very important because it gives you a very good framework of understanding the divine, of understanding the transpersonal states, of understanding like core values that help you live a really good life. And the practices of meditation that come from religion and spirituality are very helpful. And I love the structure of practices, but just living the life of spontaneity, being playful and being creative and being able to move your body correctly, that nurtures my soul. It does. Movement of the body nurtures my soul. Touching the ground nurtures my soul. Being in nature, just going for a walk, just movement is for me just as important as sleep, just as important as diet, just as important as exercise. Just like movement of the body, allowing the body to move the way it needs to move. And like movement is life. Like life works in a state of entropy. Like everything is not entropy. Life works in a state of like continual development. Nothing's ever the same. Once one moment's gone, there's never going to be that moment back, and it's all changing. Everything's flux, and your body's the same. It needs to be moving. It needs to be flux. It needs to be fluid. And I feel like that puts you in the nature of your soul, because your soul is this dynamic thing that is evolving into your awareness throughout life. And I think as you move your body, it helps that integration of the soul into the body. So just movement in general, movement makes you feel tons better. 30. How do you approach forgiveness for yourself and others in a soulful way? Forgiveness to yourself is the most important thing, because you can't forgive others if you don't forgive yourself. Because we project a lot of what's in our mind on other people, and how I forgive myself is just by accepting that mistakes are a part of life, accepting that like I'm not progressing the way I want to progress, and my wants and desires are maybe coming from a place of not knowing things, or being entitled or coming from a place of survival to try and protect the true me, and knowing that like, yeah, my ideas of where I should be, the ideas of what life is or what's going on in life maybe aren't the truth. And by that like humbling process of understanding that I don't know what's happening, I don't know the truth, I think that helps me have forgiveness for how the way my life is unfolding and the mistakes I make. And knowing that if I look back at myself 5 years ago, knowing that I've progressed so much, and I'm a completely different person, that for me is the sign that I'm doing something right and things are going well. And so when things don't go well momentarily, like maybe within the weeks or the months, I know that in the bigger picture, the years, the decades, that I'm moving in the right way, and that allows myself to have time and compassion and forgiveness. And I think that's the most important thing, is just having that slowness. It's that bigger time period. We have a lot of time. Like there's a lot of, if you read the Stoic philosophy and if you go online, everyone's like, oh, you haven't got a lot of time, you'll be dead soon. They're like, but life is a long process. Like this just felt like a long 25 years. It's gone extremely quick in hindsight when I seem to look back at life and I go, wow, I really was in school like 10 years ago. It's gone extremely quick. But in the momentary felt sense of time, it goes very slow. And I think the more aware you can be and the more you can allow yourself to make mistakes and forgive, the better that process will be for yourself. And the more self-compassion you have for yourself, the better life is and the more enjoyable it is. And if we can't enjoy life, what are we here for? So that's me, people. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that was a helpful episode. I'm going to go with a structured episode next week. I don't want to keep doing these questionnaire ones, but I just found it really interesting. I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much for listening. There's an hour and 10 minutes of another podcast, and I'll see you all in the next episode.